Hi sewing friends, I am going to do a quick tutorial for you on how to very easily and quickly draft your own elastic waist skirt pattern. You can do this if you're a beginner. It's a very forgiving pattern. I wanted to show my face so that you can see I'm currently baby wearing this precious girl. So you're definitely going to hear some snoring in between, or you might see her butt sticking into the video. But it's not me, it is the baby. And I hope you are going to jump in and draw your own skirt. It is super easy. And of course, if you have any questions, then let me know and I'll help you out. Okay, first things first, you need to understand, to be able to draft this elastic waist skirt, you need to understand how it's going to fit your body. So this is what you will have in the end. So this is the actual pattern. You can find this pattern inside the sewing group. It's also part of my Learn to Sew Your Own Clothes full course that you can also find linked inside of my school group. And the complete pattern is there, multiple sizes and everything you'll need, printable, PDF. But to draw your own, you need to understand first what you need to draw. So you will need two pattern pieces, and the first one is going to be the elastic waist skirt, the body of the skirt, or the actual skirt there, the actual piece of the skirt, fabric pieces, and then the waistband. You need a separate waistband for this. You can, of course, if you know how to do this, create a cut-on waistband that you just simply fold over rather than a separate waistband. I like a separate waistband purely because it makes it easier for me to make a wider waistband if I want it wider, or to add any details, drawstrings, and those kind of things. So this is what you're going for. You want a skirt that you can see it's not just a rectangle. So most elastic waist skirt patterns, if you search YouTube for a tutorial, you'll find that most of them are just a simple rectangle. Yes, that works. But if you only have a rectangle, you'll have a straight side seam like that. So this is the side seam. This is where we cut the fabric on the fold. And the moment you have a straight side seam like this, especially with a long skirt, it can very easily hinder your walking. So you'll probably need a slit of some sort because it could be too tight around your leg. So just giving it that gentle little bit of flare is going to make it much easier to walk in, especially if it's a long skirt. So you can see it flares out the further it gets to the maxi length. So to start with, what you'll need is, of course, to take your measurements. This is super easy. You are going to work according to your waist measurement mostly, and I'll get to that in a moment, and the length that you want your skirt. So, of course, you need to measure your waist first if you would like your waist measurement. And your waist is, I don't want to call it the narrowest part of your body because it's not the narrowest part for everyone. It's where your body bends to the side. But in this case, your waist is where you're going to pull the skirt up to. So if you're going to wear your skirt over here, slightly lower, that's what you're going to measure. If you're wearing it right in your waist, that's what you'll measure there. So I'm going to actually mark the waist on this image over here. And that is, so you're going to measure the point at which you're wearing the skirt. And we'll call it your waist. And then you're going to multiply it by 1.5. This is what creates the gathers. So if you use only your waist measurement, it's going to fit perfectly 1-to-1 on your waist. You'll need a zip or something to put this on. You can't have this with an elastic and it won't be gathered. So the gathering over here on the skirt is created by having extra fabric. That's how gathers are created. Extra fabric creates gathers, right? So my recommendation, especially if you have a slightly thicker fabric like a cotton, is to start by multiplying it by 1.5. If you want it very gathered, you can multiply your waist measurement by 2. This will give you a very, very gathered look. It will work well with more lightweight fabric like chiffons and viscose fabric like that. So I'm going to multiply by 1.5. I'm just going to use a theoretical waist measurement. So I'm going to work in inches here because my brain works faster in those whole numbers. But whether you're working in inches or you're working in centimeters, it doesn't matter. It stays the same. So let's have a 40-inch waist over here, which I feel is quite a realistic one for most people. And we're going to multiply that by 1.5. which will give us 60 inches. What we're going for here is we're going for a rectangle. We're not going to just draw just the rectangle. We're going to draw a quarter of it. We're not doing weird, funny calculations. This is very simple. Okay. So the waist measurement will be used for the width of your rectangle. That means the top and the bottom part, the short part. Then we'll get to hips in a moment. We need the length of your skirt. How long do you want your skirt to be? So if you want your skirt to have a knee length, then you'll measure up to your knee. And let's call it, how much would we call this for length? Let's use 25 inches for the length. That will be this length over here. We'll get to seam allowances and all those things in a bit. So those are your starting points. You want the length and you want the width first, your waist and your length over there. If you're not sure how to measure the length of your skirt on your own, I recommend having using one of these soft tape measures, and use a little bit of tape, masking tape or painter's tape, and actually tape it to the point you want it to stay at, and then measure upwards, and you can see on your body. You'll be able to read the measurement on your body. Okay. We have the length and we have the waist. The reason I have the hip measurement here is we always have to consider how we're going to put this thing on. How will you get the skirt on? You're going to pull the skirt on, right? So you're going to pull it up over your hips. It's going to move up over your hips. So whatever your hip measurement is, the width of your skirt at the top needs to be larger than that. It can't be smaller or you won't be able to get that on. So 60 inches is probably going to be larger than your hips. Just do a double check. My hip measurement is 42 inches, so I can see I'm safe over there. I'll be able to pull the skirt on. I don't need to worry about any closures or adding any extra fabric. If you want a skirt that's less gathered, please pay attention. It must be your hip measurement plus you need at least 1 inch. That's cutting it close. I'd say 2 inches. That's about 5 centimeters. And remember that the narrower your rectangle is, the less your skirt is going to be gathered. Okay, so now let's get to the actual drawing of the skirt. And let me draw on the back of this. When we have a sewing pattern, so here's our little mini sewing pattern here. This sewing pattern is only a quarter of the pattern because it's cut on the fold for the front and it's cut on the fold for the back. So we're only drawing a quarter of the pattern. That means we only need a quarter of our measurement. So whatever your width measurement is, you're going to divide it by 4. And 60 divided by 4 is 15 inches. That is the number you're going to use for your width of your rectangle. And then your length, we've already got length, was 25 inches. Now we need to talk about waistband. The waistband, you usually want, where's my waistband? Your waistband is going to be a strip of fabric. I've cut mine on the fold. This is my actual pattern piece. And you can see it's quite wide. I'm not sure how wide this is. This is about 11 inches almost. No, not 11, sorry, 6. Okay, it's quite wide. There we go. Right, so I've widened mine because I like a very wide waistband, because I like a wide elastic. But your waistband needs to be twice as wide as your elastic because it's going to be folded in half. So you can see I can have a nice wide 2-inch wide elastic that I can insert in this waistband. So your waistband width, yes, there. Your waistband is going to be attached to the top. So you need to take some space off the top. In my personal opinion from making so many of these skirts, don't confuse yourself with this. Just endeavor to shorten the skirt at the bottom. Okay, it's going to be much easier. But if you do want to remove part of the waistband, that part, you're going to remove the final width of your waistband. Let's write waistband over there. Your final width of your waistband. So if you are using a 2-inch wide elastic, you're going to cut 2 inches off the top. I'm not going to do that. I am going to draw my skirt and then I'll shorten it from the bottom. It's easier, it's beginner friendly, no one needs to panic about anything. Okay, so let's get to drawing. I like to do, this is how I learned pattern drafting. I did not learn all of those bodices with darts and things. I learned to make it easy on yourself, and it just made so much more sense to me. Okay, so what you're going to do, you're going to start by drawing a rectangle with these measurements that you've calculated. So the rectangle is a quarter of wherever your elastic is going to go, your waist, times 1.5, a quarter of that, and then the final length of your skirt. So of course I'm drawing at small scale here. It's easier to fit on the page. And you can use, of course, any paper. You can use newspaper. How much? 10, yes. Okay. This top over here, that is my waist. And that is 15 inches at the top. This is my hem. And the length over here is the length that I measured. Remember that I am working on a knee length skirt. And now we get to the question that we want our skirt to flare slightly. So if you look, this is the knee length over there. If you look at this length, this skirt is flared out slightly from the initial rectangle. And an easy way to do this is to just imagine that all you've done is you've flared that side seam out slightly. You see, that's what's created that little curved hem. If you have a straight hem like this, if your hem is all straight to the edge, when your skirt hangs, you'll have, it won't hang nice and smooth like that. You're going to have a skirt hem. There's my skirt, wonderful drawing, that goes like that. It's going to have these points because this is on the bias and it's going to pull down. So as soon as we just angle it up slightly like that, it will hang smoothly. So this is the beginning of your skirt. Now you want to flare it out slightly. I recommend flaring it out by at least 2 inches. You can decide, the longer your skirt is, the more you need to flare it out. So for a maxi skirt, you can see there was my initial rectangle. And for a maxi skirt, it's flared out much more, let's say 4 inches for maxi. And for midi, I'd say 3 inches. And for knee length, 2 inches. This is up to you. If you want your skirt very flared, go for it. But don't skimp on the flaring. Have at least a 2-inch space because you need to be able to move your body. It's not a fitted pencil skirt. So to flare your skirt out, mark a point on your hemline that's as far out as you'll want it. I'm going to say mine is 2 inches out. And rather than just lengthening this line, the same length you used here, in my case, it was 25 inches. You're going to measure out to this point. So you need to have a little bit of a reference there to where you need to stop at that point. And you're going to measure out your same length. Keep your ruler starting at this side seam over there and measure out the exact length, your initial length, and it's going to have it's going to be up slightly higher. So here from the hem, then in the hem, you can flare that up to that point. Just not flare, but just like curve it a little bit. There you go. And that's your skirt pattern. Now, when you're hemming, you can, if you want, you can add to the hem, you can add ruffles at the bottom. There's a whole tutorial on that inside the school community. But this is basically how you're going to draw a simple, very simple elastic waist skirt pattern. Of course, you need to add seam allowances around the outside. So you'll add your seam allowance at the waist. I'm just freehanding this, guys. Please don't draft like this. And at the side seam, that's your side seam. And then the center is cut on the fold. Now you're cutting two. One for the front, one for the back. That is your crash course in how to draft a skirt pattern. There you can see it's got a similar shape. And if you want to add pockets, there's also a pocket add-on inside the skills library. But I hope if you are into pattern drafting or you don't want to print a pattern out, that you'll try this out and let me know if you have any questions.